Well then, today is Boxing Day, so the day after Christmas, and this video strangely starts at the end rather than the beginning. So back on the 21st of November, I set myself the goal of trying to learn Tchaikovsky's December so that I could record it on Christmas Day and post it. So of course yesterday came decision time, and of course, you know, it wasn't quite where I wanted it to be. It still needs a little bit of work. So I had the opportunity to simply open another bottle of wine, and nobody would have been any the wiser because I'd never published anything previously that I was going to do this. But I thought, no, I set myself the challenge, so I'm going to have the courage to go ahead with it and I'll record. So what follows in this video is, if you like, a bit of a practice diary of how I went about learning this piece, some of the practice techniques that I used. Now, if you just want to hear the piece itself, then I've put a card here for you. Just click on that and it'll take you away from this video and onto the performance video that I released yesterday. However, if you are interested, then carry on watching, and at the end I will link the performance video for you and you can see how well you think I did in terms of meeting the goals that I had. Okay, so today is Saturday the 21st of November and I've just downloaded the Christmas edition of Pianist magazine, and that's the edition that they generally feature Christmas music. And over the past couple of years since I started my YouTube stuff, I've released a little video on Christmas Day of playing a piece of Christmas music. So I thought I'd select this year's piece now, and I'm going to have a go at Tchaikovsky's December, which they also nicknamed Christmas from his suite The Seasons. Anyway, I'm not sure if I'll be able to get it done by Christmas Day, and I thought it would be interesting to do a little vlog to chart my progress and then share it when I actually do manage to record this, touch wood. So anyway, we'll start today by doing a quick sight read through, first ever time. I'm not going to do end to end because it'd kill your ears, I guess, but we can see how it appears when I first try it out, and then maybe once a week I'll do an update of what I've done during the week, how much time I've spent on it, and maybe play some of the little bits that are coming together, hopefully, let's say. Okay, so today is Sunday the 29th of November, and this continues my practice diary, if you like, for this December by Tchaikovsky. So, you know, it looks like quite a long piece of music when you look at it, but when I analysed it, it's surprising how much of it is repeated. So basically, if I just open this, come on, wake up. If I open this, you've got basically a theme, right? So there's a main theme that keeps coming back. And then there's, I call it a Chopin-esque little waltz type thing. And that's followed by the theme that comes back a second time. Then there's a trio, as you often get in waltzes. Then the same theme, the first theme comes back again, then there's the waltz again, then the theme comes back, and that's followed at the end by a coda. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that just keeps repeating itself, and even within, say, the theme, for example, a lot of that is the same material repeated twice, a bit like Chopin's C-sharp minor waltz. Remember, I did a video on that ages ago, shows the way things sort of repeat with a slightly different ending all the time. So I basically split it into 4 main parts this week to practice. And I'll take a screenshot of this to include. So this is my diary, my practice diary. So far this week, I've basically spent about 8 hours, I'd say, working on this. And I decided to learn the main theme really, really early on, rather than wait till the end, because even though it's probably one of the easier parts to play, because it comes back so often, the more familiar and comfortable with it that I am, I think it will give reassurance. So if there was the odd wrong note somewhere in a different part of it, because you're coming back to some really familiar ground, it helps you sort of, I think anyway, psychologically relax yourself into it. And then I spent quite a lot of time working on the coda, especially the closing few bars, just really to try to get these so that, again, I'm always heading to something that I know I can play and I can play well. And they're a little bit tricky. There's one part where you would be tempted to do an arpeggio all in the right hand, and I've decided to try and redistribute it between the 2 hands. So I'm going to take the bottom C with my left hand thumb and see how that works out. Anyway, we'll see. I've also spent a bit of time working on the Chopin-esque waltz, and I don't really know why I think it's a Chopin-esque waltz. It just sort of sounds familiar to some of his stuff and some of the ways, like there's that little waltz in the middle of the first ballad, and I'm not saying this is the same as that, but it's that sort of same kind of playful, moving idea that's there. So I've been working on that as well. And of course, I've started going through the trio really just to get the notes, so I don't have large bits of it where I need to learn the notes. So far this week, I would say I've probably learned, I don't know, 85% of the actual notes, so I know what they are. I'm not saying I can play them by any means. As you'll see, I'll give you a few segments of where I've got to with these various parts, and you'll see they're far from perfect, but at least I think I understand what the notes are, and I can now start working on it. And I've basically been working on very small segments, sometimes even just spending 10 or more minutes on a couple of bars to try and get it so that it becomes automatic. It becomes automatic, I should say, and of course feels comfortable under the fingers. So that's where we are so far. Just short of 4 weeks to go now before the big day and when I need to try and record this for Christmas. Today then is Sunday the 6th of December, so 19 days to Christmas, and this is a continuation of where I'm getting to with Tchaikovsky's December. So, as we did last week, I will take a screenshot of my practice so far. So, let me just, there we go. I'll screenshot that now. And let me see if I've got it. Okay, there we go, screenshot done. So far then, according to this, I'm up to 16 hours worth of practice on this. So that's about double where I was last week, about another 8 hours done this week. And I've sort of continued pretty much in the same vein, really trying to get myself as familiar as I can with the piece. And to be honest, for me, probably what's the most difficult part about playing this is that it's fairly brisk. And traditionally, I've always shied away from playing anything that appears to me or feels to me to be a bit fast, because I know that's where I'm not very strong. I'm fine playing slower music and, you know, more reflective music, you know, nocturnes and slow movements of Beethoven sonatas. That I really love to do and I don't find difficult. But anything that's a bit more lively, even on instruments other than piano, I've always found a bit of a challenge. So I don't often go through the effort of trying to do it. But I thought this time, for once, let me just try and work on something that's a bit outside my comfort zone at least. So this week I did a little bit of investigation really in terms of how fast this really needs to go. And as you might guess, there are some remarkably different speeds that pianists take this at. Now there's a really, I think a fairly recent recording by Lang Lang, and as you might guess, he takes this at a very brisk pace. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's too fast. It's full of energy, it's very sort of moving, it keeps going, it keeps pushing forward. And, you know, for that reason, I find it interesting. Another recording I looked at was Vladimir Ashkenazy, I assume that's how you say his name. And he takes it, you know, a good bit slower than Lang Lang does. And then there's also a really good recording by the Korean pianist Cho. And he is much, much slower again. So to give you an idea, if you take just the first theme, right? Now, when Cho plays this, he takes 41 seconds to play the first theme. When Ashkenazy plays it, he only takes 36 seconds. And as for Lang Lang, he plays it in 32. And similarly, the little waltz thing. Now, when Cho plays it, it takes him 16 seconds to play it, Ashkenazy 14, and Lang Lang only 12. So that's like 25% faster if my maths is correct. So, on balance, I don't think any one of these recordings necessarily sounds better or worse than any of the others. They're different interpretations. And I like listening to interpretations by really good pianists because you always know that they're choosing to do something because that's how they feel the music is best served, as opposed to, you know, an amateur pianist like myself who might choose certain ways of playing something because they're easier to do. So I might choose to play something a little faster than I would like to be able to play it, simply so that I can at least play it in a controlled and musical way. Anyway, that's that. In terms of practice strategy this week, what I've really been trying to focus on is what I'm calling like a zero tolerance policy. And often when I practice, you know, and I guess many of us are the same, I gloss over the odd wrong note here and there and think, yeah, it's okay. That's not one of the difficult parts of this piece, so I'll fix it later. And it always works really difficult to do. So I've decided this time, when I spot something that's wrong, I'm just going to work on it until I can get it right. And I find it actually quite difficult to do because it takes an awful lot of self-control to keep repeating something again and again and again until it feels really comfortable and almost automatic. I don't like to use the word automatic, but I'm sure you get what I mean. That there's no hesitation, you don't feel you need to think, you feel perfectly comfortable playing it. So I've been doing that a lot this week. And I've also been trying to think about how to get it more secure in my memory. So, I mean, I don't mind playing from music, and when I record this, I'll probably record with the music in front of me. But it can help, especially with something that's a bit brisker, to make sure that you've memorized it pretty much very well, so that you're not really having to look and worry about what comes next. You sort of know what you need to do next. But one interesting thing I've noticed is there's quite a lot of chromaticism in the bass in this piece, in various places. So for example, in bars 13 to 16, there's a chromatic line in the bass. In bars 78 to 86, which is like 8 bars worth, there's also another chromatic line that starts from A flat and goes all the way up to E flat. And this quite often is a good way to consolidate your memory, if you like, because you know what kind of pattern you're following, and it just makes it, a little easier. And if you have a slight memory slip, it's easier to pick up where you need to be. And another thing that I've been working very hard on this week is that when I play waltzes, and I've noticed this a lot over the years, I've got a terrible tendency to ghost notes in my left hand. And by that I mean, you've got the sort of the... And what will quite often happen is that on the second of the chords, it'll ghost. So I'll get the bass note, the first chord, but the second of the chords might not sound particularly well. And I've noticed this a lot. So I've been working really quite hard this week on making sure that I don't ghost these chords. And something else I've been having an experiment with is avoiding hand separate practice. And let me say why, though, before people start saying, oh my God, what's he doing? The reason I've decided to try and avoid hand separate practice is I read in Neuhaus's book, The Art of Piano Playing, that you should think about hand separate practice a little bit like you think about the emergency exit in a theatre. It's there to use if the very worst comes to the very worst, but generally speaking, you go in and out through the front door, and that's what it's intended for. So I've been trying to put this advice into practice, and I think it works, that obviously if you just can't play something, then you do need to go to the, hand separate maybe for certain phrases. But on the whole, there's nothing that's that massively technically difficult in this piece for me to do, even though I find it tricky to play. So is hand separate that valuable? Probably not. And I found I appear to be making more practice because I'm focusing on both of the hands together. And there's nothing massively difficult in either hand to do, but coordinating them and keeping the rhythm is of course a little more tricky. So practicing hands together, I think, is a better option for this particular piece, for me at least. So what I'm going to start doing, I think, from next week is I'm going to start looking at maybe recording, but at least certainly playing it through at least once a day, end to end, because it's all very well practicing short sections, but there comes a point, I think, that you have to start getting used to stringing it together. And I've only got, as I say, 19 days till I've said I'm going to record this, and I might even go away for a few days in between then, so I've probably got less than 19 days to practice. So I think it's about time that I started putting it together. But anyway, there we go. That's where I've got up to this week. I apologise a little for the background noise. It's raining here, so I can't really get rid of that noise, but I'm sure it's okay for you. So I'll be back next week with the next installment of Where I've Got To. Okay, so today is Sunday the 13th of December, and I'm continuing my look at my efforts to learn December by Tchaikovsky from the Seasons before Christmas so I can record it and publish it on my channel, as I've tried to do every year a little something for Christmas. So let's see so far where we're up to this week. And as always, I'll take a screenshot and I'll include that in the video. There we go. So far, I'm now up to 26 hours, 26 and a half hours, in fact, practicing this in the same 4 major sections as I've spoken about before. But of course, as I said last week, I was going to start playing through the piece regularly as well, because there comes a point that you have to put it together, don't you? And if I leave it too late, then it'll be a nightmare when I try to record it, because I won't be used to playing it through. Of course, the only problem is, whilst I'm still at an early-ish stage of trying to learn it, I still make too many mistakes, so I don't want to overly do the playthroughs every week. So far I've spent perhaps an hour and 10 minutes playing through this, and that's included time spent recording to listen back later on. So, in terms then of what I've sort of got up to with it this week, I think all of the notes now are sort of there, but there are 1 or 2 really stubborn areas where, and I don't know why, but my brain almost just seems to refuse to remember what comes next. And even if I have the music in front of me, I still hesitate. It's as if, I don't know, the harmony's perhaps not what I'm expecting to see, or I'm just not used to this kind of harmonic progression. Perhaps that's it. And that makes it a little more difficult for me. So I've been trying to work on those sort of stubborn areas a bit this week, and they're improving. I can't say they're not, but they're not comfortable yet. They're not at the point where I can just play them and think more about what I want to say with the notes, as opposed to just get the notes right. So we've done that. And as I said, I started recording as well regularly. So I've recorded, before today, I'd recorded 3 times. I recorded again this afternoon when I was practicing, and I've not listened back to that yet. But one thing I did notice, and I'm glad I did start recording earlier than I would normally do, is that even though I'd been worried about the ghost notes that I tend to make in my left hand, and I'd been focusing on making sure I didn't ghost them, when I listened to the recordings, of course, the microphone doesn't lie, does it? And I started to notice that I still am quite often ghosting those chords. So what I mean is the chords where you've got and what I'll tend to do is I'll play. So you don't get the full chord, and that's obviously not good when you put it together. So I've been sort of focusing on that quite a lot this week to try and make sure that those ghost a lot less. And with every day that I've recorded, I've noticed that the next day it has improved a little, though there are still places where I sort of get that missed chord. So there's that. And I think, of course, that's one of the values, isn't it, of doing the recordings, that sometimes you think you're doing something, and in your ear when you play, because that's what you expect to hear, you sort of hear that you're playing things that in actual fact aren't there. I've noticed the reverse, to be honest, that occasionally I think I play something and it doesn't sound very smooth, and when I record it and play it back, it sounds fine. So just goes to show. Anyway, what else have we done? I think that it feels like I've sort of hit a bit of a plateau at the moment, especially with that Chopin-esque waltz part. You know, so that, I don't know why it's not particularly difficult, and I think if I use the fingering, which was like 3 and 4 rather than what I'm choosing, which is 4 and 5, which is, you know, harder to do in a way. It might be easier to control and it might be easier to get it more reliable, but I find that I don't want to be stretching my fingers, you know, these fingers here, when I can play quite comfortably without stretching at all using the other fingers. So it's not as if it's that difficult. So I'm going to persevere a little and see if I can get it to work better. I mean, it's sort of improving, and I'm trying to practice an interesting way, and I don't know if I'll be able to demonstrate it, but it's to so I'm trying to play the main notes legato and the middle notes staccato. See, and I can't even get the notes right all the time, but I'm hoping that if I continue doing that for the rest of this week, that it should fix this problem. Because it really is, it's just making sure that I don't miss notes and I keep the rhythm and I keep the left hand nice and smooth and both hands coordinated. So hopefully this will fix it. I'm using rhythms and other stuff as well and slowing down occasionally, but I think hopefully this mix of legato staccato should work. And what else? I think really probably the only thing I'd say now is I'm sort of hitting that, what I call the danger zone with a piece, which is where you feel that you can sort of play it. So each individual section, when I practice it, I can feel I can play it, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying it's always good and it's always reliable, but I feel more or less like I can control the notes. But because it's more or less, if you start then not sort of focusing on the small details that are still tripping you up, it ends up making it really quite sloppy. And it's really quite a challenge to stop myself from keep playing things through and keep repeating wrong notes rather than saying, no, stop. Why am I finding that so hard? So in that little waltz section, why is it that I'm always missing the final F with my pinky? Why? There should be no particular reason. And bizarrely, the first time through, I always miss it. The second time through, I almost never miss it. And so, but why would that be? And clearly it's to do with motor memory, it's to do with muscle memory. And for some reason, I need to try and break that and get it done. So that's why I call this the danger zone, because you think that you're nearly there. But if you try and then jump forward too quickly, you end up making things worse for yourself. So anyway, that's where I've got to this week. It's what I said, it's the 13th, isn't it? So that gives us another 11 days before Christmas. I'm away for 3 days this week, Monday, Tuesday. So at least 2 days this week I won't be able to practice. So I'll have to do some extra hours in the other days. But touch wood, by the time we get to Christmas, I should be able to record something that won't be, you know, too hard on the ears. I doubt it will be the most polished performance, but you know, ultimately it's been an interesting challenge to try and learn this in a sort of a deadline type way where I want to get it done by a specific date, because generally speaking, I learn pieces, I enjoy playing them. I don't set myself particular deadlines to get something finished by. Anyway, there you go. Have a good week. So this then continues my vlog series on my practice, if you like, for my Christmas piece, which is Tchaikovsky's December. So as always, I'll do a screenshot of the practice that I've done this week. So far up to just shy of 34 hours. So not so bad over the last month or so. Okay. Now, in terms then of what I've been up to this week, first, as I said, I lost a couple of days anyway because we were away for the start of the week. So a couple of days I didn't really get time to do any practice. And I've got some good practice in there the following weeks. As you can see, last week we were up to 26 hours, this week 34. So all told, that's 8 hours that I've managed to get done this week. But there's just 4 days to go, and I'm starting to get a little nervous about where I'll get to with this. Oh, and while I remember, if you're wondering what the green behind me is all about, I've been experimenting with trying to green screen a piano. So hopefully I'll do a quick demonstration on this video of how I can get rid of that screen and replace it with something else. But let's see anyway. Now, I think in terms of what I still need to focus on, the waltz is still somewhat hit and miss, I find, and I think it's the fingering I've chosen is probably not great. I would probably benefit from changing that fingering to something else, but there's not really time left to do it now, so I'll persevere because fundamentally it should be possible. It's not as if it's very stretchy or anything like that, so it's just a case of really getting 4 and 5 to work, and that was really the reason I chose that fingering anyway, knowing that it would be slightly more difficult to do, but you know, wanting to exercise those 2 fingers more. Okay, what else? I think that the linking passages are still a little error prone, so that's the tiny little bridge sections that go between each different section, so that leads into the waltz, the one that leads into the trio, and the one that leads into the coda, of course. So they're still a little error prone, need a little bit more work, I think. And the final part of the coda still feels really awkward, I have to admit. And what I've been doing is, rather than trying to play the entire bit at once, I've split it into a couple of different sections. So from the E flat chord, the bottom E flat chord forward, and then playing first 1, then 2, then 3 of those downward arpeggios. Like that. And then doing it from the downward arpeggio to the final flourish that goes up there, you know, the top chord at the end there. So it seems to be paying dividends, because fundamentally it's not that I can't do it, but I still, it makes my, I don't know, tense is the best word, I guess. So it's trying to make sure I don't build tension, because of course the more tense you get, the more likely it is to go wrong when you play. So anyway, we'll see. Then the last thing I've done, and I did that actually this afternoon, is I checked the timings of what I'm playing this at. And I think I'm probably rushing it too much, to be honest with you. So my timings are very close to Lang Lang's tempo, which I do like. But I think the slightly slower tempos that Ashkenazi and Cho choose to use are a little better, and I sort of prefer them. So I think that points to the fact that I'm rushing a bit, especially in the coda. In the coda, I'm a lot faster than Lang Lang even, so that's not a good state of affairs. So, but otherwise, as you can see, that the timings are relatively okay. I mean, they're in the right kind of ballpark. So I think it's just a case of focusing on slowing it down a little bit for performance and making more of the rubato that's there rather than rushing through it, I think, as I probably am at the moment. Anyway, that's where I am now. So 4 days left to practice. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I'll do the recording on Christmas Day itself. So I'll record and then, you know, edit the video and publish it at some point during the course of Christmas Day.